Hello everyone, welcome to ixamBee. In this video, I'm going to talk about the banking and finance sector and specifically how you can make a career in the private sector in the finance stream. In detail, I will discuss about the various opportunities, how the financial system works in our country, how the recruitment happens in both the sectors, and what are your growth opportunities going forward. And if you have any queries, please do write in the comments box. We'll be happy to help you and answer you that. Giving an introduction about myself, I am Prachi Agarwal. I have been guiding and mentoring and teaching for various finance jobs from the last 5 years at ixamBee. Before this, I had 10 years of experience in the financial markets, including equity markets and the debt markets and the credit ratings of various financial institutions, banks, and NBFCs. I have served as the manager at Care Ratings, which is a credit rating agency, and by education, I have an MBA in finance and BCom honors. So let's start into understanding the opportunities and how our financial system is structured. Talking about the financial system of India, we can categorize it as the public sector and the private sector. Within the public sector, the prominent entities that exist are the AIFIs. AIFIs are actually the All India Financial Institutions, right? So these are all India financial institutions, which are also sometimes referred to as the development financial institutions set up by the government for the development of a particular sector. As of now, we have 5 financial institutions all India in our country. ixamBee, which is looking at the MSME sector, NHB, which is at the housing finance sector, Exim Bank for the export sector, and NABARD for the agriculture and rural development. And then we have the 5th entrant very recently for the infrastructure by the name of NABFID. So we have these 5 financial institutions all India working in our country. The second big segment in the financial system on the public sector side are the public sector banks, or we also call them the nationalized banks, right? So there are 12 as of now. We have SBI, PNB, Canara Bank, Union Bank of India. So like this, we have 12 public sector banks in our country. And then we also have the RRBs, also known as, or they stand for the regional rural banks, right? Which are also scheduled banks focused on particular regions or in the rural areas state-wise, which focus on the providing financial inclusion in the rural space, right? So these are the broad public sector entities on the financial side. On the private, if I talk about, similarly like the public sector banks, we have the private sector banks. Now these private sector banks, you would have heard the big names like ICICI Bank, right? HDFC Bank, and then we have many more. Kotak Mahindra is there, IndusInd is there, so like this we have lot of private sector banks. As of now, we have around 21 private sector banks in our country. The next are the foreign banks. So there are various other banks which are owned or have been registered outside of India, but they have their operations in India also. So they are referred to as the foreign banks, right? So banks like, say, Citibank. So those become a foreign banks. Then we have the new kind of differentiated banks that were introduced in our country in something as recent as 2014, and it's a very, very growing sector. These are the small finance banks. So these were established with a similar kind of a thought process of getting financial inclusion in the country, right? So they have been added since 2015. They were introduced. RBI gave licenses to help serve the unserved or underserved people in our country, right? There are various banks today. We have around 12 small finance banks, like ESAF Small Finance Bank is there, right? There is Utkarsh, Equitas is there, right? So like that, there are many, and the latest entity was to be added was the Unity Small Finance Bank, right? And then we also, in addition to the small finance bank, there were also payment banks that came into existence along with small finance bank. Their purpose is to cater to the payment requirements of various people, especially the migrant laborers. And these, as of now, we have around 6 payment banks in our country. And apart from the entire banking system, a very, very important part in our financial system in the private space are the NBFCs, or the non-banking financial companies. These non-banking financial companies have been growing very fast over the last 2 decades and have become, almost as big as some of the banks in our country, right? They are also referred to as shadow banking, right? So these is what we is the broad picture of how the financial system and the banking system in our country looks like. When I talk about the public and private, the meaning of this is difference comes from the shareholding. So in public case, basically the major or the majority shareholding is with the government, and in private the government may or may not have any shareholding. If they have, it is not majority, it is very less, but mostly these are promoted by private entities and not by the government. So let's look at how the business is in our country between these banks structured. So if I look at this from the deposits point of view, so deposits, the banks, what their function is, they take deposits from the public in the form of various accounts, like you have the current account, you have the savings account, you have the fixed deposit, and then they use this money for lending. So public sector banks has a bigger share, but of course this has come down over the years with private sector taking a good big chunk of it, and the new entrants like the small finance banks have also got a 1% share in the deposit base in the country. If I talk about the other side of the banking business, which is the advances, giving loans, then also the growth has been much faster in the private space. So this orange line is depicting the private sector's growth, so it is higher than what it has been in the public sector space, right? Let's now also look at the balance sheet or the total business of these banks. So we can see that yes, the public sector banks are dominating, but the pace of growth in the private sector has been much faster. Say for example, if you look between 21 to 22, the base of public sector banks, or the total business of public sector banks has grown by around 8%, while that of private sector banks, the increase has been almost 15%. If I look at the small finance banks, they have grown at a much faster pace of around 25%. So the pace of growth in the private sector has been much faster. Similarly, if I look at the NBFC space, share in the overall global financial assets has actually now almost 50% at 49% in our country. The NBFC sector as a percentage of our GDP, so from less than 1% to 60% over the last 2 decades. So NBFC sector is another space which is in the financial system in our country, which is growing very, very fast. To name a few big NBFCs in our country, maybe by looking at the names you'll be able to associate better: LIC Housing Finance, Bajaj Finance, Mahindra and Mahindra Financial Services, Shriram Transport, Tata Sons, L&T Financial Services, India Bulls, Piramal Capital, Aditya Birla, Cholamandalam. So these are some of the top 16 NBFCs in our country. So having understood the financial sector and the various kind of entities that exist in it, how do the recruitment in these space happen? So if I talk about the recruitment process, I will talk broadly from the public sector and the private sector point of view. If I talk about the public sector point of view, these are notification based, right? So every year in majority of the entities, every year a notification comes out about the hiring and the kind of vacancies are there, and you get a timeline to apply for them, and then go ahead with the recruitment process. Now after the notification, then they are exam based. So what the notification would tell you about how the recruitment process will go ahead, which will consist of an exam. This online mode, these exams are held at various centers across the country, depending on which level and which kind of entity is recruiting. And then you have to clear these exams, which are then followed by an interview process, right? So an exam and interview may have typically 80-20 kind of a percentage. In some places it could also be 60-40, again depending on the level and of the exam and the entity. This may vary, but it is always a combination, and majorly the written exam will have more focus. And after this, the recruitment is happening, so and then you join them, and accordingly you can get posting in anywhere in the country. These are transferable jobs. You can be placed in any branch, any location in the country. Now in the private sector, how the recruitment happens: whenever there are vacancies, they may not always publicize public vacancies in bulk, right? So sometimes these are known, sometimes these are not shared, because private sector may have their own contacts and partnerships to hire people for the various vacancies and openings that come up, right? So they are not always advertised publicly, right? After that, these are mostly interview based. The selection process, if I talk about, the selection process in public was exam and interview based. Here it is mostly it is interview based, where they will check you for your technical skills, they will check you for your personality skills, they will check you for your communication skills, right? So there are various kind of skills that are being tested in this particular interview, and this interview becomes the decision maker. Based on this, you would be selected, and if you are selected, you would be given a offer letter, right? So the timeline here is relatively much less. So this entire process may take anywhere between, say, 5 to 6 months. If you get through the interview, you may be given an offer letter, and this may happen in a matter of 15 days to 1 month of the vacancies opening up, if you are so prepared, right? So this is how the recruitment process varies from the public sector to the private sector. In private also, you are aware about what kind of department or role you are being hired for, and where your posting is likely to be working in. In public sector, you can be, if it is a general post, you can be anywhere, and it can be in any department. So this is how the recruitment process happens. Now looking at the career, how the career few points, because you would be taking your decision accordingly. So if I talk about the government sector, if I talk about the salary and perks, the salary and perks at the government space and the public sector space is same for all. So again, it is told in the notification in which scale you will be, and this is generally very good at the lower level, at the entry level, and as you keep growing up, the incremental is again it doesn't grow exponentially. There will be incremental gains, but it may not be exponential, and of course it will be same for all people at a particular scale. In private, there can be variations even at the same level. So person to person, the salary may vary, and as you keep growing, the salary can be very high at the higher level. So there are chances of exponential growth in your salaries and benefits as you keep growing in the private sector. If I talk about the work profile, as I told you before, in the government sector, it's more like a generalist. You will be, and you may be posted in any department, and over the course of your career, you would be rotated in different departments and different locations, and it can be a transferable job. In private job, mostly you already know which department you are going, so it's more specialized, it's department wise. The recruitment also happens as per the requirement of the various departments and various openings that come up in different roles and profiles. If I talk about promotions in government, it is seniority based, it's also performance based, and it is done with the help of exam. So again, for promotion, you have internal exams to clear for all at different scales. In private job, your promotion is totally performance based. So if you are good, you can rise up very, very quickly, which may not be case in the government, where you may have to wait for a certain number of years before you move to the next scale. About the work pressure, in the public, it is moderate, but it also depends on your posting, where exactly you are posted. In private, it depends on the department you are in and the team that you are working on. If I talk about bureaucracy, this is also an important factor. Bureaucracy is much higher in the public sector jobs, while it is very less in the private sector. And the risk, this is one big factor. Many people are attracted towards the public sector. So yes, there is job loss risk is very low in the public sector. It could be high in the private sector. There are layoffs that happen, but you also have to understand the reasons for layoffs. There can be various reasons. And then we talk about the work-life balance, another very important factor that people are worried about. Now, I would say in both the jobs, the work-life balance actually depends on your performance. In the government sector, it may also depend on the posting where you are, right? So at certain posting levels, the work-life balance can be good. At certain, you may still be struggle with that. In private, again, it totally depends on your performance and how you take your work and how well you perform. So these are certain facts, and if you ask me which is better, I would say actually this is a question that only you can answer, because everybody has different priorities. For some, salary may be an important factor. For others, risk may be an important factor. For some, work profile may be a factor. So this is a decision that you can take based on the priorities that you have. Both have benefits and disadvantages, but which one suits you best? People have made successful careers in both the sectors and have had really fulfilling careers in both the sectors. So it's now time for you to decide which one you prefer. And even if you have a preference, you can aspire for other jobs by getting gainful experiences at the other and vice versa. So there have been people who have moved from the government to the private sector, and there have been people who have moved from the private to the government sector, gained a lot of experience and learning on the way in different sectors. So if you talk about where you want to make a career, it depends on you. At ixamBee, however, we help you in both the aspects by helping you unfold your potential. We provide you guidance and courses for a lot of jobs related to the government sector. On the other hand, ixamBee has also partnered to help you place in the private sector. So if you are interested to know about the private sector opportunities, you can register at the link in the comments box. So thank you everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and get your dream job faster. All the best.